She's good? Okay. I'd like to introduce our newest addition. This is the superstar you were looking for, Alf. Chris Egan. He's the Director of Planning and Community Services, and I thought I'd get him to come up before we get going today and introduce him so that he doesn't walk out the room and Garth asks, who was that guy, like I did last time. So, Chris, come on up.
Thank you, Darren. As Darren said, Chris Egan. This is, I guess it's day 10 with the town. As a brief, very brief overview, I'm happy to share my resume with you, and if you haven't seen it, but I'm a civil engineer by training, and I've got a partial master's in public administration that they wouldn't let me finish at distance when I relocated to Alberta some 12 years ago. Been in charge of planning, design, and construction departments at 5 major universities, completed 4 campus master plans, 2 at one place and 2 at 2 other institutions. Looked after and been responsible for hundreds of capital projects worth about $1.1 billion in total. They add up fairly quickly in university campuses when you're spending $100 million and $200 million at a time, but also have a lot of $10,000 and $20,000 projects, which comes with regular project management activities. And aside from that, I've been a contractor. I've had my own company, a project management company, and so done a few things in my career and in my life, and I'm very pleased to be your new Director of Planning and Community Services.
Well, great. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Welcome aboard and welcome to Team Tabor. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regular scheduled Tabor Town Council meeting for February 14th, 2022. Just to clarify, we have Councillor Firth that's on the line with us today, and Councillor Sorensen is not able to attend today, either in person or via our online format. So with that, I will call the meeting to order and ask for a adoption of the agenda, please, as presented. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion that Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on January 24th, 2022 as presented.
Sorry, Councillor McLean, just looking for an adoption of the agenda, actually. That's
sorry.
Just one ahead, one before that.
Oh, one before that. Okay, sorry. I move that Council adopts the adoption of the agenda.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Thank you. All right, on to item number 4, adoption of minutes. Item 4.1, minutes of regular meeting of Council, January 24th, 2022. Mr. Tabor.
So regular minutes are in front of Council for your consideration. There's no special comments.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or concerns, comments? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move that Council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held on January 24th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Business arising from the minister are none. Item 5.1, follow-up to the meeting inquiry of Council, January 24th, 2022. Mr. Tabor.
The Tabor Times had put forth a media question last meeting, and we were asked to, administration was asked to bring it forward for this time around, so here it is for Council's discussion.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
I guess it was lit up there to make a previous motion, but now that we're into this discussion, this is, as I had expressed to Council before, this was one of the interests that I'd taken, and I attended those provincial sessions as presented by the government of Alberta and as presented by the Federation of the RCMP in learning of what's been taking place, the reasons for it, and paid close attention to what's going on there. So I don't know where the rest of the council stands on it. I know where I stand on it. And you know, perhaps I have I've tried to not hold any bias in the decision, because I did serve with the RCMP for 27 years, but I also served for 18 years under the Provincial Police Act. So I think I've got a pretty good flavor of both sides of the coin as to what it would look like and what it would feel like for myself and for the operation, operationally, administratively of a police service. And I've come to the conclusion that it's a matter of expense, and to me, there's just no getting around it. At the end of the day, the dollar it's going to cost more money, period. And those costs are going to be borne by taxpayers, whether you're in a jurisdiction that's being policed by the RCMP or not. It's going to be coming out of provincial coffers, which we all contribute to, and which would take away from other areas where that money, those funds might be used. So I don't know how you wanted to approach this, Mr. Mayor, what the actual ask is from the media, just asking if we're in support of a provincial police force or not, whether we wanted to produce a statement or how that wanted to go, or what discussion is. If some people are going to be in favor of it, some people aren't. We don't, and I don't know where that stands right now. I do know that 84% of those polled in a recent survey in the province of Alberta were not in favor, and the actual work that's being done was predicated on the Fair Deal, Alberta Fair Deal panel that surveyed Albertans trying to determine what would be a fair relationship with the federal levels and the province. And policing was coming in at item number 14. At item number 15 was separation from Canada. And the percentages attached to those are 34% and 35% respectively. So it seems to be that same group of people that are interested in separation are additionally interested in the police service. They kind of go hand in hand. So, but a recent poll done by the Federation, and they all use, mainstream pollsters, people that are professionals in the job, and they're coming out at 84%, not in favor of going to a provincial police service. So, and I stand with that 84% personally. I think that those presentations were done in a, well, I'm not afraid to use the term scare tactics when they're doing the presentation. They have a slide presentation that states a number of facts of RCMP versus provincial police, and some of it just isn't true. I challenged them on that in the room, and it didn't go well. But I'll just give you one example, and this was a big one, because you say, the RCMP are controlled by Ottawa, so Ottawa's dictating everything that happens with the RCMP, and that's one of the points on the slide, is that all RCMP policy comes from Ottawa. Well, it doesn't. It can't. A lot of policy does, and that's in terms of administration, hiring practices, training practices, standards of equipment, things like that are all controlled by the headquarters, as they are here, controlled by the headquarters in the town of Tabor. But when it comes to matters of operations in terms of traffic enforcement, liquor enforcement, those things are provincial acts. You cannot have a national policy that dictates how those things are done, how domestic violence investigations are completed, because each jurisdiction has their own Solicitor General with lots to say on those topics, and they direct the police of jurisdiction in how they want that carried out in their province, which includes Alberta. The contract between Alberta and the RCMP is very clear that the government of the day, particularly the Attorney General, Solicitor General, has direct control of the policing function in RCMP. That is handed over in the contract to the province. It's not, there's not a big cord on it that keeps Ottawa in charge. It just doesn't work that way. And I mean, that's really obvious to anybody that knows, and yet that's what they peddle, is that notion that Ottawa's pulling all the strings, and it's just not true. So, and I think that's a big major point in what they're trying to sell. So that's where I stand on it, Mr. Mayor, and the rest of the council, so you know. And I think it's well-founded in documentation that I've collected, reading that I've done. That's what all the notes were about, Mr. Thibault, is he was watching over my shoulder. And I think that I'm very well positioned. I have an instinct for this kind of thing right now, and it tells me that this is not the time for the province of Alberta to be doing switching over police services.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rudd, for that very informative input, and that's very helpful as well. And for me, I was on a consultation process, I think I mentioned in the last meeting as well, that included some 400 municipal representatives on that, which was definitely, whatever the percentage might have been, higher than not, that were not in favor of the provincial police format. And I found that it was very, I guess, kind of open-ended and all over the map, if you will, with some of the questions and comments. But the bottom line is there's way more questions than answers out there related to this serious possibility as a topic. And I don't know, I know 30 to 40 years ago, this was a major topic at that time, and it was always the money end that sort of dictated what the end result decision was. And I don't think that's changed today. By what's come out numbers-wise and the rationale and everything else attached to it, doesn't seem to be selling the sell as well as it should. And I'm siding with yourself, Councillor Rudd, as well. I question many things, and I still don't think there's been near enough consultation, all things considered. And there's many gray areas, and as I said before, way more questions than answers on a serious topic, as this, I don't believe, is reasonable at this stage, and I at this stage would not be in favor of that either, with everything that I'm aware of, and with your extra input today, that only enhances that thought process at this stage anyway. So welcome any other comments council members may have. Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank both yourself and Councillor Rudd for your very eloquent and persuasive arguments. I'm not as persuasive, nor can I argue like you. I will say I think that this is a very polarizing issue. We don't need more polarization, Mr. Mayor. I think as a council of the town of Tabor, we should leave it alone for now. I do agree there's many more questions that need to be answered, but to make a resolution to this effect, I think what would not be productive. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? So at this stage, Councillor Brown, any question also?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd have to say I agree with Councillor Beckering on this. There isn't a lot of information, really, that's the facts that have been presented to us that I all agree with. And at this time, I couldn't say it was good or bad, so I agree with what Councillor Beckering says.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the input that we have received from everyone, and especially with your backgrounds. I do appreciate that, and coming forth to council and bringing that information to us, because I don't have a policing background, so I do appreciate that. But I do side with you, Mr. Mayor, and with Councillor Rudd. I do think that this is a very expensive proposal, and I don't necessarily think it would be in favor of everybody in Alberta, and especially for our members of the town of Tabor. And so I think that this is something that, yeah, like has been said by Councillor Beckering, and that there are a lot of more things that need to be figured out before we say one way or the other. But I do have to say that I agree with you on that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth? Anything to add your end?
I agree with a lot of what's already been said, and that I don't know yet with the information that I have read and heard exactly how it would impact us as a municipality. So I can't say for sure whether I would be in favor or not in favor. We're a little bit unique because we are a small community, but we do have our own police force. So I would need more information about how it would impact us before I could make a definite decision one way or the other. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So general consensus, I understand that and appreciate all the comments, that there is no need for a resolution at this stage. And I think I'm likely going to be asked about this at some point in the future, but at this stage, I don't know that it's necessary to answer that question that was posed here last meeting by the local media. Again, it's just a combination of things that have come up as concerns. I think it's a general message, and the media will already have that available from our perspectives there, but I would agree also there's no need for a resolution at this stage. So with that, moving on to item 5.2, Downtown Sidewalk Improvement Survey. Mr. Tebow.
Looks like Mr. Scheer is already queued up. This was an item that was on our standing item list for a while, and we were asked by council to go away and do a survey. That survey has taken place, and the information is here for Gary to present.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of council. From November 8th meeting, council's directions was to survey the downtown businesses. We sent out a survey, basically a QR code with their business license renewals. 8 out of 84 businesses, 15 responded. We're just looking for what type of, do they want to exchange of paving stones? Do they want colored concrete? So if we could just go to the graph, it kind of explains everything. It's not much of a preference, but I mean, out of 15 businesses, this is what you're going to get. There's no clear winner here, obviously. So we're just looking for council to have a discussion and provide a little direction, which direction you would like to go.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Scheer. From my perspective, it's not a burning success regarding the survey, certainly, and it seemed like the responses that were returned were not overly concerned because it's kind of a split, you know? Mm-hmm. So the issue to me is, are we making a mountain out of a molehill here just because someone complained one time or two times or three times? Having said that, however, like you said, Mr. Scheer, before, it's our responsibility to provide a safe environment for people on the sidewalks and bulb outs, right? So we have to do our due diligence, correct, sir?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, so I would not be opposed to supporting the patching that's been proposed. I think that's probably a good idea, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure in the survey if it relates the cost of the paving compared to the colored concrete. If they'd been aware how much more the paving was or concrete was, either or, may have changed the answers. But 15 out of 84 is no way we can base a decision on that. We do have an issue there now, though, with some paving stones missing. I think as council and as public works, we have to decide how we should fix them, if we should go with cement or just replace the stone. So it is a decision we'll have to make sooner than later. I am personally in favor of the colored concrete just because I've had experience with walkers and that on pavement or on paving stones. It is not comfortable. Sorry about the phone.
All right, thank you. I think it's it's difficult with the survey. Thank you for dealing with the survey and everything involved and everybody involved with that format. But it's pretty difficult with the information that come out, and no fault of anyone's in that regard. But I don't know. We're usually good for around 10 to 50%. That's pretty much right in line with what we get back for surveys, right?
You're exactly right, Your Worship. Yes.
Yeah. So thanks again for all the efforts. But I think all things considered, we have to look at the safety end, and cosmetic is one thing, but the safety end has got to be the most important part of this. So to me, I think whatever is practical and repairing the areas that are safety issues attached to this, then that needs to be the focus. And whatever that costs, it costs. And however we do that, to me, that's an either or. But it's I think we need to deal with that aspect more than anything else.
So if we could point out a couple of things. Yes, we understand there's no clear winner here. We did plan on replacing the blocks, re-leveling the areas we discussed. But we found another area in front of the MCC thrift store where we would consider replacing all the blocks with cement or with paving stones, whatever council chooses. But that is really deteriorating quickly. We've noticed that over the winter. So that's another alternative. Do we want to do that? And we have a sidewalk program this spring that's coming up this summer. So we need to know what direction council wants to go so we can do that replacement.
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, is there a breakdown of the cost? I think we saw that last meeting.
Yeah, if you scroll up a bit, there wasn't much difference between paving stones and, so $944,000 for concrete, $1,084,000 for paving stones. So about $140,000 difference.
I would suggest any minor repairs perhaps would be, repair them with the stones, but any large projects, I think we really have to look at the end plan there.
So we're trying to get our capital projects going for the year. So we need a little bit more direction just to say, yes, we want concrete. Yes, we just replace paving stones. As far as that one block in thrown into the MCC thrift store.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, just curious, this isn't an all-at-once deal, is it?
No. That is all at once, yes.
That's all at once, yeah. So what would you normally spend in a year on sidewalk maintenance? And
So every other year, council has directed us to put $450,000 to sidewalk repairs and replacements. So that's what we work through. So we have this half a block replacement we're looking for now. So
you're looking at 400?
the project's going to be 400.
So that would take the whole budget for the town?
That's the whole budget for the entire town.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, we have a certain portion in operating that we do on our own. That's about 25, 30,000.
Yeah.
But this will be covered under the capital project. Okay?
Okay. So maintenance isn't going to do it?
No. And you don't have to decide now, but it would be nice if you gave a year you would like this to be put in the capital projects. You say year 2025, let's look at replacing them. We don't have to say exactly what it's going to be done, but in regards to the capital project, put it in the queue. Let's get it into a year.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
I think, Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a resolution to put $95,000 aside for...
That's for
this
leveling of the current paving stones, things like that, yes.
Okay, so just to identify to council, there was $95,000 put aside to do something. At that point, it was stones, so we do have $95,000.
All right, just to clarify, does that 95,000, will that take care of the hazard areas that we're?
That's the hazard areas we discussed,
Okay,
but it's not in front of the MCC thrift
Okay.
store block is what we're discussing.
I see.
Okay,
All right.
that's an addition.
Okay.
And that's what we plan to do in the capital project for this year.
All right, thank you. Councillor Broom?
Perhaps we should put this forward to the next meeting to discuss that, so we have a little more input
Yep.
from Public Works and whatnot. So it is a big decision whether or not we change or not. So I think we should put this forward to the next meeting.
All right,
And
thank you.
actually have a number where we can talk about.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me there's probably a couple of issues here. I think the $95,000 mentioned by Mr. Tebow is correct. The motion was passed by council to spend those dollars for safety's sake, I guess I would put it. And also you were to inquire for grant funding. Has that been done, Mr. Chair?
We're looking at that right now. We've actually looked at some ICIP funding for the entire downtown area. And you see the next presentation, Mr. Leahy is going to bring forth the street lighting project. So that's why we're asking for a year. So we bundle it all together and then send out some applications.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to continue if you
Sure.
don't mind.
Sure.
The one in front of MCC, is that $450,000?
No. That's, I don't have the exact cost,
Oh,
but that 450,000, that's sidewalk replacement. We're gonna be doing lots in the downtown area, but there's throughout Tabor area.
Right, yes, I recognize that, Mr. Scheer. Any estimate on the cost of?
Just that area, I don't have that cost.
Oh, okay. And I would agree with Councilor Bruin, then we perhaps defer this to a future meeting. But I think the motion that was passed previously on November the 8th should proceed, Mr. Mayor, I think.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Councillor Rudd?
Is there any supporting evidence that concrete is safer than block? I mean, block's got to be always shifting, and you know, I walk downtown and you do encounter the odd bump, and so is there any data to support one over the other in terms of safety?
So we've been gathering this data over the past several years, and what we found is we've been using fiber reinforced concrete now in the Tabor area because the high water tables and the fluctuation between freeze thaws, we find that holds together quite a lot better. It's makes for a better product and makes for a safer product for the public to walk on. And we would be going that route. It's just a matter of, do you want concrete cut or colored concrete, right?
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Firth, anything to add your end?
Nope, just listening to the discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so we're still in need of a motion. Mr. Scheer, Mr. Tebow, Councillor Beckert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts this report as information as presented and direct administration to bring forward to a meeting in the near future regarding the capital works project regarding sidewalks, I guess.
All right, thank you. I cover all the bases. Mr.
I think
Tebow?
specifically we were looking for in front of the MCC, Gary, is that correct?
That is correct, but I think we're gonna have to come back in a couple meetings and ask for that same question again. You know,
Okay.
unfortunately, it's not a big issue, but it is an issue, right?
All right, thank you. Councillor Brown?
If Councillor Beckering would accept a friendly amendment to come back with the cost comparison with
For that one area.
paving
yeah.
stones and the cost in front of the MRC. Or, yes.
You probably won't see a lot of difference, probably about 10% is all the paving stones, right?
Okay.
So if it's
All right.
50,000, it'll be probably 55
How would
to 60.
how would time wise, like paving stones, how much quicker would that be done than cement?
It's about the same. I mean,
There's
all we're
not-
gonna do is take out the paving stones, compact it, because it already is the right depth and it already has been compacted, because there's sand and gravel underneath it, and just pour over top.
Okay, I
We're not
withdraw
ripping
my
everything
friendly
apart.
amendment. It looks like it's good.
All right, Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would accept the friendly amendment from Council Brew.
All right, thank you. Ms. Van Ham? You need to clarify that amendment?
Yes, please.
All right, Councillor Bruin, could you clarify your amendment?
Friendly amendment to Councillor Beckering's motion that we include costs of the concrete compared to paving stone timeline expected. That would be it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beckert. You're all right with that? Okay. Ms. Van Ham, got that clear enough? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, friendly amended motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. All right, on to item 5.3, additional costs and street lighting downtown area. Mr. Tebow.
Ramon's queued up and he's going to provide a presentation. Again, this was in consort with the concrete or block replacement downtown.
All right, thank you. Mr. Legi, when you're ready. Good afternoon.
All right, my presentation today is about downtown 48th Avenue streetlight replacement project. The project will be in 48th Avenue between 50th Street and 54th Street. At the regular meeting of council on November 22nd, 2021, council requested an investigation into the additional cost of the streetlights in the downtown core area. This was in connection with the sidewalks and sidewalk replacement project. And it was requested that the information was brought back to the future meeting. As you see in this map, currently there are 11 light poles and 2 power poles on 48th Avenue. The existing lights are 35-foot steel pole with a cobra head. There it is. And each light has an overhead wiring. I requested a quote from Coldest to replace and install the new light poles. Coldest submitted a catalog to review. We reviewed it and picked 2 fixtures that were like the already existing lights in the bulb up. The first fixture is called Pendant and is very close match to the existing. For this, we'll salvage 11 existing street lights, supply and install 19 LED pendant, and the project estimate cost is $325,000. This is a side-by-side comparison of the light and the bulb out, and at the bottom it shows the light and how it looks like on a pole. The option 2 is domus, same as option 1. For this, we'll salvage the 11 existing street lights, supply and install 19 straight 20-foot decorative 4-inch step poles, and 1950-watt decorative luminous domus LED. The project estimate cost is $304,000. Again, this is a side-by-side of the light in bulb outs and domus. At the bottom shows how it will look on a pole. Here is the side-by-side comparison between existing and the 2 options. For this project, Fortis will drill under the 48th Avenue and placing a conduit and wiring to each light underground. This is how the new arrangement will look. You'll have 19 new light pole arrangement. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Councilor Brown.
Just a quick question, the conduit, laying the conduit, is that part of the 304 and the 300? That's
Yes.
included with the wiring?
Yes.
So it is quite key if we're going to do some cement work, paving stone work, that if we're going to do this, it should be done at the same time.
Yes, this should be done when we are doing Gary's project.
Yes.
So they go hand in hand. Preferably, I don't know when he wants to set, I think 2025. This should be added to that project.
I think that's very well. I like the thought with the banners hanging there, especially with the Veteran Memorial banners, having a way to display them better. And I do question the 150 watt if that's bright enough, and if we should go up to 200 watt, just because of the problems we've had with the residential light.
Once we approve this project, then it goes back to Fortis. And then they come out and do a whole analysis of the exact wattage of each light.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation, sir. The purpose of the motion, in my view, was to increase or improve the lighting in the downtown of Tabor, not necessarily beautification. Am I incorrect or correct in saying that?
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
So when looking at the previous motion, it doesn't, you're correct, Councilor Beckering, there's nothing to do with the prettying up of. It is to do with enhancing the lighting. So we're moving from 11 poles to 19 poles. Decorative must have been something that we were thinking of looking at doing for the downtown area. I couldn't tell you what the differences in costs would be from a decorative to the type of pole that's down there today.
All right, thank you. Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Tebow. I'm not speaking up. I'm not opposed to the projects as such, but I find it interesting that that the intent of the motion was not followed, in my view.
All right, I just wonder if it's easy enough just to come up with just the lighting enhancement as opposed to the decorative enhancement
Of
difference there.
course, I have a catalog, I can
Okay.
redo this and bring it back.
Yeah, I think in all fairness, as was confirmed with Mr. Tebow, Councilor Beckering's right. If that's what the ask was, it's great and, you know, for improvement, et cetera, but it might be a little more than we're bargaining for, I guess, all things considered there. So got to look at all those options, I think, all things considered. So I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Tebow, then to bring back some information in that regard.
Yep, if council wanted to give a motion to administration to do what you're asking, then we can certainly come back and provide
right.
those.
Thank you. Anyone prepared to make a motion in that regard? Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a motion. I'll try to anyway. I'll move that council directs administration to do a cost comparative analysis between the presented project and a project which would not include beautification of the lighting, but just better lighting, I guess.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, perhaps I should include, but this is to include underground wiring, because I think that's very important. We do that at least. So I'll include that in motion somehow, Carrie. You can figure it out, right?
All right. Get enough accuracies there, Carrie?
Yes, I think we're good, thank you.
All right. Councilor Brune?
I appreciate Councillor Beckering's motion, but I think part of it, if this is adding additional lighting, so at the time, if we're putting underground wiring, we have to take that in consideration as well. The decorative lighting is, of course, decorative, but if we're going to be replacing bulbs, and we might as well bring them up to date, and some of those poles are getting fairly old and rusty, so it may be the time to do it no matter what.
All right, thank you. Just another question regarding the lighting, that just to be clear, I think maybe Mr. Shearer or Mr. Tebow or both can answer. I believe we were looking at some other areas as well. Is that separate now? Is it, Gary, was Fortis looking at doing a kind of evaluation of the other areas that we pinpointed previous?
So we're looking at the entire town. Mr. Leahy's doing a report on that now.
Okay.
The Tabor Police Services has provided their report on the dark areas in town. So we're utilizing that, and that'll come back to the council for.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. All right, we do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. Great, thank you. Item 6, bylaws. There are no bylaws. Item 7, action items. Item 7.1, recognition of service. Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Medal presentation. Mr. Tebow.
So Mr. Steve Munshaw is in his finest once again. I think that's the second time this year we've been able to see that, and I'll let him move ahead with the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Munshaw.
Mayor and Council, thank you so much for having me today. I dusted off the old jacket again. Rob's got me into it. So we're here today to welcome and congratulate Rob Ducharme for 30 years of dedicated service. He joined us back in 1991 in October, and he's been working hard, diligently serving our community ever since. Even today, at just before council started, about 10-15 minutes before, he tried hopping on the truck and heading out to help the community again with a motor vehicle collision. But the crew pushed him off the truck and made him get into his finest as well. So he was able to join us. And so if the mayor would be okay with presenting what we have today is the Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Medal. And this medal is given out by the Canadian Volunteer Service. And
Absolutely.
sir,
Perfect. Thank you.
Captain Ducharme. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated for doing that. If you want, there's a recommendation. I don't know if that needs to be read out for you at this time.
Yes, thank you again so much. Thank you once again, Captain Ducharme and Chief Munshaw, for your information and presentation information as well. We would need a motion in that regard. Also, Councillor Rudd?
I'd like to make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Council recognizes, commends, and congratulates Captain Robert Ducharme for his 30-year Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Medal. And Council thanks Captain Robert Ducharme for his dedicated and long-standing service to the citizens of the town of Tabor.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruni had some questions? Okay. Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Yeah, it could be. All right, on to item 7.2, RFP award for self-contained breathing apparatus. Mr. Thibault.
So it looks like we'll have Steve stick around and provide any background and answer any questions.
Right, thank you. Chief Munshaw.
Thank you. I'll stay up here for a little bit, I guess. So this purchase was actually awarded through the capital purchasing in the 2022 year. And it was both for a product that affects the fire department as well as public works. We looked around and were able to joint with multiple communities. So Pitcher Butte put an RFQ out with Coldale, Pitcher Butte, ourselves, Town of Tabor Public Works, as well as Warner to come up with the best pricing. This pricing came back to be able to be under budget for all of our equipment needs. The process went through our purchasing department to make sure all items were met, and now we're here in front of you today to answer any questions. If you do wish to go ahead with the item, there is one recommendation item that I have to repair. I wrote down right behind GST that the capital funding would come from reserve, and that has to be removed as it's already set for the capital budget.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckern?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. What were you using previously to this? Do you have one now?
MSA, yes. We have the exact same units now. What they do is they only give us a 15-year life expectancy through industrial standard. We hit our 15 years this year, becomes life cycle replacement. These will be traded in. As you've seen, there is a trade-in value for them.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Rudd?
I'd make the motion the council awards the RFP for self-contained breathing apparatus to Rocky Mountain Phoenix in the amount of $259,227.56.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Also, on to item 7.3, Canada Post lease extension. Chief Munshaw, you're still here. Mr. Thibault?
Yeah, it looks like administration has queued things up perfectly, and
All right.
we'll speak to the lease.
Effective and efficient. Gotta love
Thank
that.
you so much. Welcome to have me back. Well, Mayor and Council, Town of Tabor has had a building within itself of 1953. In this building, the Canada Post has actually been the leasee of this building ever since. We took over back in 2019. It was an extension lease that we just took over. That lease did not have any increase per year. As this year came into fold, we were able to renegotiate this over 5 years, but we also were able to increase. We've seen an increase of 11% for the upcoming 23 year, as well as a 2% thereafter, taking care of some inflation costs that you see throughout the time. This lease is within my building, so that's why I'm presenting it to you. If you wish to move forward with it or ask any questions, I'm here to ask those questions now.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rudd.
Just for clarification, when I was reading through the documents, old and new, a whole pile of names being mentioned, so this building belongs to the town of Tabor.
It does, sir, completely. Yeah, we bought it out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Becker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find it very interesting that you were able to negotiate a 11% increase. I know how tough it is to deal with federal government departments. How did you do it?
Put my suit on again and just smiled.
Bonus, there we go. All right, Councillor McLean.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
That council authorizes the CAO to sign the 5-year extension of lease with Canada Post at 5207 49th Ave, Tabor.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean
Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.4, Veteran Banner Project. Mr. Thibault.
Administration has asked Emily Hembro to come and provide an explanation around the banner project.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Emily.
After a very successful veteran banner project in 2021, administration received multiple phone calls. I have to start over? Oh, my. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. After a very successful veteran banner project in 2021, administration received multiple phone calls from one concerned citizen in regards to the town donating the veteran banner proceeds to the Royal Canadian Legion Branch number 20. Because of the overwhelming success and the continuation of this project into 2022 and future years, administration would like an updated resolution from council authorizing the proceeds for 2022 and future years to continue to be donated to the Royal Canadian Legion Branch number 20.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Becker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the individual you speak of, Emily, so I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr.
All
Mayor.
right, thank you.
That council authorizes the donation of proceeds from the 2022 and future veteran banner projects to the Royal Canadian Legion Branch number 20.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. On to item 7.5, Tabor Trout Pond Irrigation. Mr. Thibault.
So we're going to put Mr. Chris Egan on the hot seat. Typically, this would be presented by Brian Martin, but our recreation manager is not with us today.
All right.
And he is being supported, should there be any questions, Chris being new enough, and there's a few members here from the Trout Pond Committee. So,
all right, thank you.
So there's a presentation. I'm not sure how to get up on the screen. Is there a detachment? Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Mayor and Council, today I have a presentation that provides a proposal to add this capital project to the 2022 approved capital project list. The project scope involves extending the existing irrigation system to include the entire cap site. It also will include some landscaping work to repair some rutting that has made maintenance of the natural grass area very difficult. And Also, we'll include some hydro seeding at the end of the fall once the campsite use diminishes. We'll make use of the existing infrastructure. There's a pump in the washroom facility that is also a pump house that includes a 25 horsepower pump and a 3-inch main line that'll have more than sufficient capacity to take care of this increased load of watering. The benefits that will come from this particular project will include obviously greener space that has been requested by citizens both using the park and individuals using the campsite. There'll be opportunity for a more diverse green space, and we'll be able to have a focused watering plan. That will allow both the hydro seeding and seeding and grass around the campsites and the trees that we have planted previously in the area to be consistently watered and improve the survivability of the materials. Also advantageous, or as an advantage to this particular project, will be weed control and tall grasses that have presented both a fire hazard and have limited the use of the lands adjacent to the campsites. Because of the landscaping work, we'll be able to utilize parks mowers to maintain the space instead of using tractor-pulled dryland mowers from Public Works that have been a requirement with the existing conditions. So we'll have a much cleaner and better maintained area for everyone who utilizes the parks. It'll be, one of the outcomes will be that the park will start to look more park-like rather than the natural grass and the natural landscaping that we've seen up to date. We will have to do, obviously, a little bit more mowing and trimming. We'll be doing weekly irrigation checks and work to maintain the pump and the system. However, as a result of that, we'll have much less need for staff hours and staff work in relation to using the watering truck. This image provides, in the blue, is the existing 3-inch irrigation system. And we'll be simply teeing off of that system and the pump in order to irrigate that entire campsite area. So between the blue line and the campsites themselves. This will be a very difficult image to see, but it describes the lateral irrigation lines going out and around each of the campsites that will green up that entire space. And related to budget, we have materials costs we believe will be between $30,000 and $40,000. Labor costs, $20,000 to $30,000 estimated, and we'll employ sub-trades to do the hydro seeding and some of the dirt work to smooth out the area at a cost of around $25,000, which will bring the total cost estimate of this work from between $75,000 and $95,000, leading to the proposed budget, overall budget of $100,000 before council today.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I sit on the Trout Pond Committee, and we had a very good presentation from Public Works and Mr. Irrigation there. This is a much needed improvement, I feel, and I think as we as Recreation, as the Trout Pond Committee also felt, the big thing is the fire hazard there with such dry ground, and if we want to keep this looking fantastic and be a fantastic success in the future, this is something we definitely have to do, and there is money in our budget with the Trout Pond Committee to do this.
All right, thank you. And yes, just to clarify, we did have a very good presentation from Toby, who's also here, and I think it's appropriate if Toby, if you had something to add, you'd like to add as well, if you like. You were very good with our initial presentation there that the Trout Pond Committee, 3 of us were privy to, but if you don't mind just adding a few highlights there, as well, that would be great. Totally, please.
Yeah, this will pretty much, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, this will
No,
give us
that's
a
right.
great opportunity to diversify our green space out there rather than having a couple shrubs here, a couple shrubs there. Especially with if we're applying for a tree grant too, this will help us irrigate properly. So, and citizens have requested much greener spaces to camp out there and enjoy it. So this is definitely one step forward that we can roll.
All right, I appreciate all your efforts here. Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Now, with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that council directs administration to proceed with the Trout Pond Project Irrigation Landscaping Project. With total cost not exceeding $100,000, the funds shall be allocated from the Trout Pond Project Fund.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, there was some mention in the documentation of extending that watering over to the dog walk area. Was that under consideration at all in this presentation?
That was a previous proposal that was under the previous director, and we were told that we wanted to separate the Trout Pond funding from the dog park funding. There is a project underway for that, but that's a completely separate project from this.
Yeah, that would have been another question. Couldn't that funding be used for that, cross project, and that makes sense. So, okay, just needed clarification.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Mr. Irwa, you had a question also?
Mr. Orr was just pointing out that I think there's something that was maybe missed in the motion or incorrect, John?
Yeah, I was just requesting the motion to be defined because council directs administration, I believe, to add whatever it is to the Trout Pond Park to the 2022 capital project. The reason being the funding doesn't come from the Trout Pond project, it comes from the reserves because the previous ones we've also done, some come from federal gas tax, some come from MSI. So I would request that motion to be defined just to avoid having challenges with the auditors.
All right, thank you. So just to be clear, Mr. Thibault, exactly what are we missing?
So I believe it's the mentioning of the funding source.
It says the Trout Pond Project Fund, okay.
Right, so
So
it's
you needed
actually
to say-
wanting to come from the Capital Projects Reserve, Mr. Orwa? 2022 capital projects.
Yes, so oh, you want me to read? Yeah, sure. So I think to be clean, we should say council directs administration to add the Trout Pond Park Irrigation Landscape Project to the 2022 capital projects with total cost not exceeding 100,000 with funds coming from capital reserves. Then it will be clear and clean.
All right, which is one and the same with what the monies related to the Trout Pond is all about anyway.
That's correct, just for audit trail.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So with that, we do have a motion that we've just passed here. All right, Councillor Beckert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's just withdraw that motion, Council Brewer, and make a new one.
All right, so, okay. It just becomes a council motion, but we're okay with withdrawing this because it's fresh and, okay. All right, Councillor Bruin, you good with that? Just withdraw your original
Actually, I
motion?
was just about to say I'd withdraw my motion, but Garth beat me to it.
Okay.
One thing I want to be clear here, though, Trout Pond does have some money that has been raised and put aside for the Trout Pond project. So it is in capital reserves, but there is a definitive amount of money that the Trout Pond has for improvements at the Trout Pond Park.
That is correct. Just for clarification, the funding side on the Trout Pond, since it started, part of it came from federal gas tax, part of it came from MSI, and the rest came out from reserves. So we've been spending this money over time, and I think we do have about 1.5 million already spent. Now with the 2.1 million overall project, we still are sitting with about 600,000.
Yes, and that's what I understand that the committee's been working with. We have some money in our fund
That's right.
to use there. So I'll withdraw the previous motion. Mr. Mayor, I suppose we need a motion on that to withdraw.
Sorry, Mr. Tebow, you had something to add there?
Yeah, so Councillor Beckering had suggested withdrawing. There does have to be a motion to withdraw, and
So a
Councillor
motion to
Beckering
withdraw,
made
yeah.
that motion, so we need to vote on that and then re-present the new motion, please.
All right. So Councillor Bruin, would you be okay withdrawing, formally withdrawing your previous motion in whatever wording you decide? Councillor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since we're into the nitty-gritty dirt man thing here, I would propose a rescinding rather than because I don't think a councillor can withdraw a motion that's been made and passed.
Right, it's a council
Just
motion,
rescind it.
yeah.
Thank you.
So, all right, so we'd have to have a new motion to say that motion be rescinded, and as long as we're okay with, then it disappears officially. Okay, all right. Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I rescind my previous motion with the Trout Pond project.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin, a new motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion that council directs administration to proceed with the Trout Pond Irrigation Landscaping Project with a total cost not exceeding $100,000. The funds to be allocated from the town's capital reserves, 2022.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. Great, thank you. All right, on to item 7.6, electric vehicle charging program. Mr. Tabor.
Mr. Blake Horanek is going to come up and provide the information for the vehicle charging.
All right, thank you.
Councillor, Your Worship, for those of you that don't know me, I'm our Tabor's Municipal Energy Manager. I'm here before you today to bring Council up to speed on a new grant opportunity called the Electric Vehicle Charging Program. The EVCP was issued by the Municipal Climate Change Action Center with funding coming from both federal and provincial government. Tabor submitted an expression of interest and met with the MCCAC regarding the program. MCCAC will partner with Tabor and provide 100% of the total project cost, up to $200,000 per municipality. The funding model works by Tabor providing the upfront construction cost and the MCCAC providing a rebate check for the full amount of the construction cost after the project is complete. In order to submit a funding application, Tabor must provide details regarding charging locations, all costs associated, charger type specifications, all in a detailed quote accepted by Tabor. Is there any questions so far?
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor McLean?
Sorry, were you not done your presentation?
I'm just asking if there's any questions at this moment.
Oh, at this moment?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I'll let you get on, sorry.
Okay.
All right, Councilor Rudd?
Well, I was just going to ask about, you talked about location of the charging units, so just in consideration of that, if the town goes over to electric fleet, the positioning of those would have to have, public access as well as access by a town fleet as well. So I don't know if that poses any kind of problem, whether we would need to put one in a secure place or whether they would, public access for everybody would be, and as well as the town fleet.
Yeah. So what we would
I don't
do.
know what you're proposing there.
So what we would do is we would separate out Town of Tabor fleet from public access chargers. Basically, in our first round of EV charging stations, we'll call it the first go around, we intended to install 14 Town of Tabor fleet charging stations and 4 public charging stations. So they would be on kind of a different network. So the public ones would be in a public parking lot, advertised public use. They can go tap their app, do their thing. Whereas the fleet ones would be strategically placed kind of where our facilities are and be separated out just for Town of Tabor use. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, Rudd?
Okay. Sure. So administration reviewed charging station manufacturers and networks in Canada. Currently, FLO Flow has the most comprehensive charging network in Canada with over 3,300 total charging stations. They offer turnkey charging stations built in Canada and provide bulk discounts for municipalities. The charging stations would integrate with the existing flow chargers that you guys see off of 50th there. So the justification for the sole source in this recommendation is compatibility. Goods or services must match existing brand or equipment for compatibility and is available from only one supplier. So we would be falling under that jurisdiction there. So if directed by council, administration would obtain quotes from 3 local qualified contractors to install and commission the town-supplied EV charging stations at the locations provided in the attached location plans. So basically, the town would purchase the EV charging stations and a local contractor would install them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councillor McLean?
So my understanding is like mostly to have them available for the town fleet. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the intent.
Okay.
With this grant funding, you do have to provide a certain amount of private or public versus fleet charging stations. So we do want to integrate some in. We already do have a fast charger and a level 2 charger available to the public, but we did want to add a couple more. But primarily we're looking to add for the community's use, but also for Tabor's future EV charging station needs.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. It's Lane, is it? No.
Blake.
Blake, yeah, sorry. All right, Blake. I tried really hard to be interested in this, and I couldn't get myself to do it.
That's all right.
The only thing I want to know is it going to cost us anything?
No, not a dime.
Attaboy, great question, Councillor.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Councillor Rudd?
Yeah, we gonna need data on the usage of the current publicly available terminals on 50th?
Those ones were built in partnership with Southgrow, and the town isn't affiliated with them, so they are public and they're networked, but the town doesn't have any kind of jurisdiction or say with those ones there.
Now, that question goes to the interest factor as well, so I just curious how much is it getting used? We really don't know, do we?
I did talk to their director, Peter, today about it, and he said that there is use there. It's only going to get bigger, though, over time, right? We're going to see more and more of these units.
Yeah.
That's the hope, anyways.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel we're almost putting the cart before the horse with these. We don't have the demand yet. We're not even sure of the technology. Things are changing so fast, and this is a fair bit of money to put out. I appreciate the thought of it, but what we're asking to do, or being asked to do, is supply publicly owned parking spots for basically a gas station to sell gas. Not gas, but electricity. Where I just can't get this, I can't be sold on this yet. And I can't see our public works trading our snow plows in for electric vehicles operating 24 hours a day in cold weather. So I'm not sold on electricity yet. And my experience, I've seen 3 vehicles since those new charging stations have been put up. I saw a green colored truck parked there once, but I've seen 1, 2 maybe actually charging. But that's just my observations.
All right, thank you. Councillor McLean?
Sorry, just another question.
Yeah.
So the public ones, would the town be profiting from public use off of these charging stations? Like we would get like the person would be paying like in a sense, like we would get like a revenue from this, a little bit of some kind?
Yeah. So basically they would operate just like any city's parking meters would be. City Lethbridge charges about $2 per hour for their level 2, we'll call them trickle chargers, which are deployed at some of their newer facilities. I do agree with Councillor Bruin that when we first started looking at this, I was under the same mindset where if you're rolling through Tabor, you're going to stop at the Esso or the Shell or wherever, charge up and go. The intent of these, we're not looking to install these kind of fast chargers that people traveling through Tabor would be utilizing. we're looking to install them in places where if mom and dad come to drop off their kid or go to watch a hockey game, they can charge their EV for an hour or so. So the intent isn't to be the energy supplier for your EV vehicles across town. It's just to help them kind of facilitate them when they're in those moments where they're downtown and they need to plug in for an hour or two, something like that. The main intent is to help facilitate our fleet transition, and I do understand that we're putting the cart before the horse in some sense, but it's free money. We're not paying a dime for this. So our intent is jump on it, get them in place. The vehicles are going to start to come eventually, and we'll be ready for it at that point.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify, maybe Mr. Shearer and Mr. Thibault can add to this, but I believe Raymond told us here a little over a year ago, they were intending to go all electrical for all their fleets, and I think that's taken place. Mr. Shearer, are you familiar with that?
Yes, I was, Your Worship. And we've been looking at that too. We even looked at electric garbage truck collections, for containers, things like that. All those are coming on board now, and you're seeing more and more grants coming available to purchase those vehicles. So we see this as a good first step and the right step in the right direction.
Right, all right, thank you. All right, thank you so much for your presentation. Any other questions whatsoever? Councilor Firth, did you have anything to add?
I don't have any questions, but I did. I think that if we can get this infrastructure in place and it's not going to cost us anything, then I would be in favor of it, and I would be willing to make a motion to that effect.
All right, thank you, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm just switching screens. So I move that Council directs administration to add the electric vehicle charging program to the 2022 capital budget for the amount of $200,000, not including GST, to be funded by the Municipal Climate Change Action Center, and Council directs administration to sole source the flow charging stations by Add Energy Technologies, Inc. for the estimated amount of $75,000, not including GST, and Council directs administration to solicit 3 quotes from local qualified contractors to install the charging stations for the estimated amount of $125,000, not including GST.
All right, thank you. Councilor Brown?
A question, by putting these quotes out, we're not accepting it yet. We're just looking for quotes. The other question, I saw we had 1 parking spot in front of the Legion hall there. So that would be limited to only electric vehicles being allowed to park there. Unless you're charging, you're not allowed to park there.
Right, so to answer your first question there, yes, once we get our 3 local quotes, I would bring them back to council with a recommendation to proceed with the lowest bidder. But yeah, we would leave that up to council and come back for a recommendation there. And 2, for that charging station, yeah, we would have a kind of a painted sign or a signage and painted stalls for EV that we would like to earmark solely for EV vehicles. How we want to police that, I'm not sure, but yeah, they would be designated for EV charging.
So it'd take 1 parking spot from the front of the Legion, dedicated just solely for electric vehicles?
Not from the new parking lot that's adjacent to the EMS building there. But again, final locations are, we can obviously make amendments to those too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We do have a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. On to item 7.7, Alberta One Call Trade Name. Mr. Thibault.
Mr. Shearer is going to come up and provide an explanation for the name change agreement.
All right, thank you, Mr. Shearer.
Thank you. Basically, it's just Alberta One Call changing their contract, changing their name. Not a lot of differences. They're going to be called Utility Safety Partners now. They're asking for more insurance, but we always had $5 million liability insurance anyway, so it doesn't really matter to us. The change, you're seeing the fee structure, where you're seeing a designated fee rather than a user fee. So before we were up, and the chart shows it at the end, we were almost paying $2,200 a year. Now we're around a little more than $1,500 if we pay right away. So we don't see anything wrong with this, so we're recommending that council supports the change in signing the contract.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor Brown?
I'm full of questions today. It's still free to public though, when you dig, nothing's changed out. It's just basically a change in name.
There's no change. You call, you ask for locates. It's just that we don't get billed as much, that's all.
Yeah, but no additional charge. I guess the end user, if you need to locate.
There never was charges
No,
for.
so that's not changing. Okay, at that, I'll make the motion.
All right.
That council approves the town of Tabor to remain a member of the program and directs mayor and CEO to sign a new agreement with the utility safety partners.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.8, uncollectible accounts receivable. Mr. Tebow.
We'll get Mr. John Orwa to join us for money.
Right, thank you, Mr. Orwa.
Good afternoon, His Worship and members of council.
Good afternoon.
So, administration has prepared the accounts receivable with a value of $500 and over that we consider uncollectible as of December 31st. And normally we bring this one for council for approval. And we are lucky this year we only have one account, and this is coming from a cemetery invoice. It's about at 1,400. And then we also have, as per the procedure within the same policy, that we bring forward anything under 500, which of course are written off at the discretion of the CEO. So I'm just here to answer any questions if you have.
Right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckard?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orwa, I know you to be a very persuasive man. I'm surprised that you can't collect this money.
Well, some things we know, but others we do not know. The ones we know we can talk about, but the ones we do not know we can only speculate. This is opening and closing of a grave.
Oh.
So I decided to end it there.
Yeah, thank you. Good enough.
All right, thank you for that explanation. All right, what's that? Someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Rudd?
I can make that motion that council approves the uncollectible amounts receivable in the amount of $1469.25 to be written off as of December 31st, 2021. And that council accepts the list of uncollectible accounts under 500 that have been written off for information.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.9, Commission Secretary position. Mr. Tebow.
So we've got Mr. John McDonald that's here representing the commission that's going to provide the background content for you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon.
I watched everybody else do that and I missed it myself. So, commission meeting, we supported the motion to move and increase the hours for our secretary. The Tabor Municipal Police Commission realignment in 2019 required a secretary to be hired for the purposes of carrying out the business of the Tabor Municipal Police Commission. Since that time, consulting services have been received by a duly qualified individual. With 5 new commission members having been appointed, the work of the commission has increased, and there are several projects that the commission would like to complete in the next 3 years. This includes the development of proper onboarding package for new commission members, a detailed review of the commission's policy manual, a best practice review of other policy manuals from other commissions, a FOIP policy, and etc. This work exceeds the current allotted time that was budgeted in the 2021 for the 2022 year. As a result, a request must be made to council to increase the budget by 240 hours or $6,000. The commission reassesses year by year and make appropriate requests to council in future in the November yearly budget discussions. The 2021 Tabor Municipal Police Commission budget will return to the town of Tabor an amount that will far exceed this request. As a result, no new money is required.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? All right, someone prepared to make a motion? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council approves the 2022 budget increase of $6,000 to the contracted services budget line of the Tabor Police Commission's budget to pay for increased professional services for commission businesses.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Your last sentence, you said no new money would be required, but you're asking for $6,000.
Well, no new money. The money that we're returning, we're asking for $6,000 returned back to the budget.
Right, makes sense. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Beckert? All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too. Item 710, Tabor Food Bank Coldest Night of the Year event. Mr. Tebow.
I'll toss this one back your direction, Mr. Mayor. You can speak to this.
All right, thank you. I think maybe the new council members aren't familiar with this, but we've been part of this, myself and or other members in the past, and or council supported in the past year. So it's basically just another event they're holding. They weren't able to hold last year for obvious reasons. So it's on again this year, February the 26th. And all proceeds go into the food bank. So I am participating. I'm not sure if anybody else from council has been asked to join any team, but there's still openings out there if that's the case. But that's what this is all about anyway, supporting the food bank for one of their biggest fundraising donations for the year. And great cause all the way around, as always, much needed. Open any questions council may have. Councilor McLean?
So is this like a food drive that they hold?
It's a walk. It's anywhere from a 2 to 5 kilometer walk.
Okay.
So you sign up for whichever one or the other, and try to obtain whatever funds are donatable out there, willing participants and or people willing to promote the much needed funding requirements for the local food bank. Right. Any other questions? Councilor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a great cause, and I would support it, but I thought we discussed this at previous council that it's not council's place to donate money, taxpayers' money to charities or something like this. It's not our place to spend taxpayers' money on donations.
I'm not sure I remember that coming up, to be honest, Councilor Bruin, but I believe we have support in the past. To clarify that, Mr. Tebow?
Yep, administration looked back and it had come out of the council discretionary fund historically. I think 2019 or 2020 it took place in that fashion.
All right, thank you. Councilor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me that this is kind of a extraordinary request regarding some donated funds from the town of Tabor, taxpayers' dollars. I grant Councilor Bruin that. But I think this is about as worthwhile a project that we can possibly donate to. And for goodness sake, regarding discussion purposes, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, absolutely.
That council donates $1,000 from the council discretionary fund to the 2022 Tabor Food Bank in support of their Golden Night of the Year, Coldest Night of the Year award. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. On to item 711, resignation to Municipal Library Board. Mr. Tebow.
We'll get Ms. Carrie Van Ham to speak on this one for us.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow, through to council. We were very close, but we now have one resignation received, so there is one opportunity on the library to fill a position.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councilor McLean?
I can just give a little bit of background. I mean, obviously, you all got the letter, but she works for Avail, which does the audit for the library, so she had to resign. But I am prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Council accepts the resignation of Ms. Kayla Kinneberg from the Tabor Library Board, and with regret, and council wishes Ms. Kinneberg the best in her future endeavors.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. And on to item 712, standing item council requests. Mr. Thibault?
So like every meeting, we have our standing items for council to bring items to administration's attention. Looking at the current list, barely fits on the page. So the 4 items that are on there, Public Works spoke on item number 1 earlier today. Still in progress for item number 2. Item number 3 is going to take till the summer to come back. And the item at the bottom for recreation is still in progress as well. As mentioned earlier, Mr. Mayor, we are looking at the lighting with Fortis throughout the town. So I don't think we need to discuss it here. We're already looking after that.
All right, great, thank you. All right, any other standing item requests? Councilor Rudd?
Yeah, we've talked about it before and it never really made the list, but we discussed closed session and the implications of that and developing public trust. And so I had a couple of thoughts on that. And one was that when we do move into closed session, that perhaps we be a little more succinct in that transition from the open meeting into the closed meeting, just by way of explanation, because we are online here, we are explaining that to the community, and just to make sure that we iterate properly why we're doing it, and it's lawful, it's and required, but just so that people understand and that we get a little better transition from open discussion into the closed. That's one thing. And the other thing is, did we get any feedback on having the broadcast continue when we come back into open session? I know that was talked about, perhaps designating one of the IT staff members to, on every second week, or when there's a council meeting, rather, to be scheduled noon to 8 or something, so that we can accommodate that in the open session. And I just wonder if we had chased that down, or whether there was any response on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Thibault.
I don't actually have a recollection of the going back into from closed to open, but certainly if council would like that, we can accommodate. I don't know that it has to be an IT person. I think someone would be able to figure it out, myself maybe even included, to turn it back on again, but we could certainly accommodate. There's nothing saying we shouldn't go back and record open session at the end. So if council desires, we can do that if you wanted to ask us.
All right, thank you. So with that, you would need a motion in that regard in some capacity, correct?
I would like something, just because we don't do it currently.
Right.
So it would be great to ask us to do it, yeah.
All right, thank you. Councilor Rudd?
Yeah, and just further to that, while you're looking into that, Mr. Thibault, perhaps some sort of, statement or something. When you tune into the online, you get, we're coming back shortly, and 3 hours later, it pops off the air. So if there was some verbiage or something that could be on there explaining what's happening, and that speaks to the, proper transition from open into closed, so people understand, and then they get some sort of recognition of what's going on when they're looking at the screen. If something could be drafted up for that could be put up there, I don't think that would be all that difficult. And do that in line with, you could push the buttons after, no objection to that.
All right, so just to clarify, I think Mr. Thibault was still looking for a motion in that regard to accomplish that request. Correct, Councilor Rudd?
If council, I could make that motion then, move the council directs administration to prepare a statement to appear on the broadcast describing the process of being in closed session, and that we have a proper statement read in that transition from closed to open for community clarification.
All right, thank you, Councillor Becker. You also had a question, comment?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Not on this particular item.
All right, thank you. Okay, so does that cover all the base for both, I believe? Councillor Rudd, was what you suggested for the closed session portion and/or coming back out into open session, correct? Okay. Mr. Tebow, does that cover the base? Pardon me?
I just had a question for Councillor Rudd.
Yes, Councillor Firth, you bet.
Thank you. What exactly, like, you're looking for more of an explanation about why we're moving into closed session? Is that, I just want to be sure that I understand what you're asking for.
Yeah, because when we do that, Councillor Firth, we understand what's going on, and it's rather, I feel it's kind of brushed over a little bit. And like I say, we all know it's lawful, we all know it's required, and so does the public that pays attention. But I think it just makes it a little friendlier, a little more professional, if that's if there's just clarity provided to that transition. That's my objective. I know the motion was a bit wordy, but that's what I'd like to see happen. I think it just builds our community trust as well.
All right, thank you. I think just to clarify just what's in our current agenda here, and what's on the public for closed session material, and it indicates 4 different items, and it quotes the sections involved for all 4 items. So I don't know, I mean, I suppose that could be added, Mr. Tebow, but I think it is covered as far as what we're doing and why. We're just not getting into extreme details. We're giving them the base heading of what's involved, but we're not getting into the private details. It has to be according to the FOIP legislation related to the sections applicable. Mr. Tebow?
So if I'm understanding Councillor Rudd's request, I believe he's asking us to state that we are going into closed session for FOIP reasons, and potentially we're mentioning, the Freedom of Protection and Privacy Act or some kind of a transition as to why we're going into closed session. Would that be accurate, Councillor Rudd?
Councillor Rudd?
Mr. Mayor, yes, exactly. It doesn't. We don't need to go into any detail. We can't. But that's just a friendly way to make that transition, and it's polite to the viewing audience. I really think it's missing.
All right, so I think it's just a duplication, adding that into the online aspect, correct? What's on paper right now, what we just discussed there. So I think that sounds reasonable, all things considered. Mr. Tebow?
And I believe, I thought I also heard that with your motion, Councillor Rudd, you were looking to have us continue the recording once we came back into the open session, and we didn't hear that in your motion. Were you intending that as well?
Yes, I was. I intended that to be there, that we would be able to go back broadcasting when we come back into open.
All right, so he's adding that part to the motion as well. So, all right, we do have an additional item added to that motion. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Great, thank you. And Councillor Becker, you had another standing item request?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just perhaps discuss for a moment the Meadows project. I'd like to have, if possible, with council's consent, a presentation from our finance department and Mr. Bergen in a very near future, what's happening with that and how are we proceeding. Thank you. I'm not making a motion. I just want to gather some input from fellow councils regarding should we be doing this or not. But I think we should, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Becker. And just to clarify, I'm going to have Mr. Tebow add to that, but we've just had that discussion, and that's planned for a future meeting, I believe the first meeting in March, correct? That very topic.
Yes, administration was anticipating the new year coming, and yes, Councillor Becker, we are looking at a delegation. I believe Mr. Egan, myself, and Mr. Scheer sat down, and Mr. Bergen, and we're targeting March 4th or the first meeting in March. Sorry, for just such a thing.
All right. All right, thank you. Councillor Beckert?
Thank you, Mr. Tebow. I'm sorry to waste your time, guys.
No, that's not a problem at all. Great to have that clarification, for sure. Any other standing item council requests? Councillor McLean?
This isn't, I don't want to make a motion. I was just wanting to bring this up for discussion, actually, with council, of potentially looking at the idea of changing parallel parking to more of, what's it called?
Angled
No,
parking?
yeah, instead of angled parking, to have parallel parking on Main Street, because I find that the way it is right now, because of the angled parking, you're sometimes having to drive over the line to get around people's vehicles, and even sometimes backing out when you're beside big vehicles. It's sometimes really hard to see past them, and so I find that safety is a big issue too, and especially at certain parts, there's like just certain parts of the street, I feel like the angled parking comes really far out, and so you have to like really dodge around vehicles to kind of safely get around. So I just wanted to bring that up for discussion. I'm not looking to make a motion or anything, but just to have some discussion from council. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think it'd be more than applicable if you're wishing to look at that possibility, Councillor McLean, just to submit an email and or a letter for the traffic committee consideration, which meets quarterly, and they would take a serious look at that. And if you can be specific with the exact locations you're talking and the concerns, and they will look at that accordingly and make a decision, and we'll come back to council as a result. All right, fair enough. All right, anything else? All right, we don't have anything else. We've got all the motions covered with what's discussed so far today. All right, with that, we do have delegations slated for 8.1, Old Man Watershed Council, who are joining us online as well today, correct?
Yes, good
Mr. Tebow?
evening, everybody.
Good evening. This is, I believe we have Shannon Frank with us on the line. Yes, there she is. Good evening, Shannon. How are you doing?
Hello.
And welcome.
I'm good. How are you?
You feel free to go ahead when you're ready, Shannon.
Okay, perfect. It's not letting me share my screen. Is somebody sharing my slides on your end?
Can we get the presentation on the screen there?
Or I can do it if I'm given permission.
Our IT expertise on it right now, Shannon.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. I'll just say next slide then. Thank you. So yeah, I'm Shannon Frank with the Old Man Watershed Council, and thank you for making some time for me this evening. We should have received in the mail, I see you have our funding request letter. We always ask every municipality within the watershed for 47 cents per resident. So thank you for your donations in the past. And I'm here to give you an update about the past year. So I'm talking about the Old Man Watershed, of course, and this is the natural shape of it, covering a large area. Tabor, of course, is near the mouth of the river, but not quite. And if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about the organization and then a little bit about our projects. So next slide. Our vision is a healthy, resilient watershed where people, wildlife, and habitat thrive. And our mission is to be a collaborative forum for all voices. So what that means, next slide, is that we always have to think about those three pillars of our society here in Alberta. Like you, we think about environment, society, and economy, or as some people prefer to say, planet, people, profits. So next slide, there's actually 11 watershed councils across Alberta, one for each major river and one for a lake. And we work together on provincial issues, and our job is to be that local voice from our communities. Next slide. So in order to achieve that, we have a diverse board of directors with 19 seats. Next slide, and you'll be able to see some of the organizations that are currently filling those seats. So they're separated by sector. There's a seat for towns and villages, which is currently filled by Mayor Kent Bullock from Barnwell, and Heather Caldwell from Colehurst is the alternate. And those folks are elected at Mayors and Reeves. We also have seats for agriculture, irrigation, industry, etc., covering all the sectors that we can. And our job is to share information. And next slide, please. We do that in a neutral manner. So we're all about sharing information in two forms. So the first type is science, and we do our research to figure out what is science telling us about choice A or choice B. But we never say, you must choose A or B. It's just about sharing information. And we understand that in order to maintain trust with people, we have to remain neutral. The second type of information that we share is stakeholder voices. So from our local sectors, what are their questions? What are their concerns? And often what we share with governments and decision makers is, these are areas where there's lots of agreement, where people have come to a consensus about something. And these are areas where there's still some disagreement. We need to do more discussion and talk about these issues. So that's kind of how we operate, whether it's talking about water allocations, a coal mine, you name it, it's the same approach. So if you go down to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about some of our projects. So go down to the next slide. So we do talk a lot about legislation and policy. I mentioned some of the issues with like coal mines or water allocation. We share information with decision makers through public engagement processes. We're often invited to provide feedback on various topics. We have a seat on various government committees, such as the South Saskatchewan River Basin Water Coordination Committee. That's about making sure if there's a drought, how do we work together to make sure everyone gets the water that they need, while also meeting our obligation to send 50% to Saskatchewan. We have a seat on the Alberta Water Council as well, and also on the Alberta Energy Regulator Multi-Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So those are some of the ways we're sharing information about legislation and policy issues, mostly with the provincial government, but occasionally as well with municipal and federal governments. Next slide, please. We also have quite a few on-the-ground projects. So our biggest one is in the headwaters, the mountains that provide 90% of the water for all of us downstream. And we've been having a big education focus out there. We have 2 or 4 summer staff every summer going out and talking to recreationists directly. Talking to them about using bridges, staying on designated trails, picking up garbage, putting out fires, not spreading invasive weeds, that sort of thing. And we found people are very open to that, very interested in doing their part. And we've had great success with just talking to people directly. We also do education activities for kids and such. And we also do restoration. So we planted 2,500 willows last summer at 7 different sites along 7 different creeks. And then we also take samples at those sites and do a bit of a creek monitoring samples to figure out how healthy is this area, and once we do some restoration and education, is the health improving? So we actually monitor the benthic invertebrates that live on the bottom of the creek. That's why in the picture you'll see us with nets, because we're catching the little critters in our nets and using that to tell us a lot of information about the health of it. So last summer we spoke to almost 1,800 people in person in the backcountry. And we also did 218 surveys to ask people what issues are important to them, why they are spending time out there, what they value. And that helps us make sure that we're reaching our audience in a way that's effective, and we can also see how things change over time because we repeat these surveys. Next slide, please. One of our other big projects is the Watershed Legacy Program. So this is a small grant program supporting direct on-the-ground stewardship. The town is also eligible to apply. So if you did have an environmental project, you can also apply for funding. Most of the applications that we get are for protecting rivers and creeks. So it's fencing, off-stream watering units, weed pulls, garbage cleanups, that sort of thing. And we have funded 70 projects so far. And this is a photo of a spring development where the water's piped into a trough and it's so clean you're able to drink right out of it with the cows. So here's us drinking out of the trough, and it's just a great photo showing, this is what we want to see everywhere. Each year we fund about 2 to 5 projects, depending how much money we have. Next slide, please. We work quite closely with our Indigenous partners, so we have restoration and assessments with both Kaurna and Piikani Nation. We work with their land management departments to plant willows and do the creek monitoring that I mentioned earlier, and we're really supporting their work. And together we've done 65 health assessments and 3 willow staking events last summer, and 1 seed collection initiative to restore a native prairie. Next slide, please. We do offer youth education initiatives, so we do a lot of field trips and hands-on activities where we teach the children about the benthic invertebrates, the bugs on the bottom of the creek. They love that, and we get them outside and wading around and seeing things for themselves. We also do in-classroom presentations and youth events like scouts and such. Next slide, please. And our last project that I want to touch on is our newest project. So it's all about building trust between rural producers and urban consumers, and helping people understand where their food comes from, how it's grown, and what producers are doing to make sure that their food is safe and healthy, and helping to alleviate any concerns that people have about their food. So this is just getting underway, and it's going to involve a web series of written materials and also in-person events where we'll have producers available to answer questions and share what's happening out on the land. So we find a lot of urban folks have questions or concerns, and they don't often know where to turn or what they hear, if it's truth or not. So we're helping build that trust so that we can all work together on watershed challenges that we have, and making sure people are working, side by side, neighbor by neighbor. Next slide, please. So please keep in touch. I encourage you to renew your membership. As the town, you can be an organizational member, and as individuals, you can be an individual member. It is free. And we have a newsletter, we have a website, we're on all the social media channels. So we do encourage you to keep in touch, and you can follow along and see what we're up to. Next slide, please. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this site. It's not too far from your town where the Bow River and the Old Man River meet. And from there, it's the South Saskatchewan River.
All right, thank you so much for your presentation, Shannon. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd.
Yes, thanks, Shannon. That was an excellent presentation. I didn't hear too much mention of industry as a partner. When you talk about the vision, where people, wildlife, and habitat thrive, I don't see industry mentioned there. But I do see talking about, planet, people, profits, then that certainly alludes to industry, whether that's agricultural or forestry, mining, or energy research, or oil and that type of thing. So are they not interested in being at the table, or is there nobody that can come to the table? Just curious.
No, they're definitely at the table. Sorry if I wasn't clear enough on that. So we have an industry seat on our board. Right now it's Spray Lake Sawmills. Errol Kutcher, if you know him. And in the past, we've had groups like Montum Resources was our last person. We've had, I can't remember who was before them, but yeah, there is a seat, sorry. And agriculture has a seat, irrigation has a separate seat, and they're all on our board, and we work closely with them. Alan Harold from Lethbridge Northern Irrigation District is our irrigation seat, and he's also our treasurer. We work a lot with agriculture, more on the prairies, of course, and we work a lot with Spray Lakes in the headwaters, doing restoration together, and they help with planting the willows and trees and such. So yeah, we do work together quite a bit, and there is definitely interest, and we get a lot of support and donations and funding as well from industry. So yeah, good question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckard?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, hi, Shannon. I spent some time on the Old Man Watershed Council many, many moons ago. And at that time, I remember there was some funding available through granting. Is that still available? And my second question is, how big is your budget, please?
Do you mean our grants for our funding or for the town?
Oh, yours.
Okay, sure, yeah. So yeah, we get most of our funding through grants that we apply for and are specific to various projects. We get a grant from Alberta Environment and Parks for being a watershed council. Everyone gets kind of a keep the lights on kind of grant. And then we also apply regularly to ones like the Watershed Restoration and Resiliency Program that was started after the flooding of Calgary to build up natural infrastructure. We get a lot of grants from groups like the RBC Foundation, TD Foundation, and such. And so our budget varies quite a bit depending on how many grants we can secure in a year. Most of them are 1 year or 3 year grants. So our budget varies anywhere from $500,000 to I think like this year we might be around $1 million. But it just varies so much because sometimes we get all the money up front and we have to spend it over 3 years, and sometimes we get a check every year. But that's kind of roughly where we're at.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising for Shannon? All right, thank you again so much, Shannon, for your presentation. Appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from council? Councillor Rudd?
Any idea how they arrive at this figure, Mr. Mayor?
Not 100% sure, but I believe it's been consistent across the board. Mr. Tebow, is that correct?
If you look at their letter, they're doing a calculation of 47 cents times the I forget the year, 2019 population census, so 8,400 and something.
Okay, so it's virtually the same as what was back in 2019 is what they've come up with? Councillor Bruin?
I would suggest that we stick with the status quo and use an amount of $1,500 through our discretionary fund.
All right, just to clarify, is that what we did for 2021 previous? That's accurate. Mr. Tebow?
Yep, so in the background, it speaks to what had happened in the past. I believe that's accurate, that there was $1,500 coming out of the council discretionary fund in 2018 and 2021. So that looks like that's what has happened in the past.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Firth, do you have anything to add there?
No, I was just listening to the presentation and and the discussion. Thanks.
All right, thank you. So council is comfortable with the $1,500 suggested? All right, someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor Bruin?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make the motion that council makes a donation of $1,500 to the Old Man Watershed Council, and it comes from the councilor's discretionary fund.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Tebow.
I think we'd like to define the year. The 2022 was missed on the motion. Sorry, I wasn't quick enough on the button.
All right, thank you, Councillor Bruin. So we'll have to have a rescinded motion then?
I need to rescind it.
Have to rescind it. Yeah, make the motion to rescind your previous motion.
I'll make the motion. I rescind my previous motion.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried unanimously. Councillor Bruin, you want to do a redo on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make the motion that council donates $1,500 for the year 2022 to the Old Man Watershed Council from the councilor's discretionary fund.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. He said that. Yeah, I did. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Good. Thank you. All right. Any media inquiries? Mr. Tebow?
I've been made aware of no media inquiries.
All right. Thank you. With that, if we just move into closed session, please, and then with a 10-minute recess, please. Councilor Bruin or Councilor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion that we recess for 10 minutes and then go into closed session at the conclusion of the 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor?
In favor.
Carried now. Thank you.